Hey, and welcome to Connections, Coffee, and Confidence with me, Janice. Do you know what happened to me today? I was in a meeting with a client, a woman I've known for about a year, and I really think so highly of. And she said to me she had never considered podcasts as PR. Well, I can't even tell you what happened inside of my brain. There was like a momentary short circuit, a moment of, what? Because podcasts are absolutely a PR tactic. When you consider public relations is all about creating and maintaining relationships, and your voice plays such a huge part in expressing yourself, podcasts can be a significant tool in your promotional and reputational toolbox. And in this episode, I'm going to break down 10 benefits of guesting on podcasts. Hi, I'm Janice Fogarty, and I'm a communications strategist and consultant. The Connections, Coffee, Confidence podcast is for professional women entrepreneurs who have established themselves and their business, and they're ready to get serious about using the power of communication to surpass their business goals. On this podcast, I discuss everything from leadership to establishing a business vision to the intricacies of creating messaging, publicity, and more. I speak to women who excel in communications in their business, whatever they do, and get an inside look at how they created a thriving livelihood. So top up your mug and welcome to this week's episode. First, I'd like to acknowledge that it's an awkward old phrase, guesting on podcasts. You can have a guest blog, which has been around forever, but not a guest pod. I don't think there's a cute name for it yet because it's such a relatively new phenomenon. But if you come up with something, post it on IG and tag me. I'd love to see your thoughts. Okay, first of the 10 benefits of being a podcast guest is pretty critical to those of us in a major hurry to get our message out. It's access to an engaged audience you didn't have to work to generate. These people are coming to a platform you didn't have to build, and you don't need to maintain. The podcast host has worked to create a listener base that is interested in their topic. Their audience trusts them to provide the relevant content, so they show up regularly to listen. You essentially walk in and dazzle. And I know there's a lot of talk about who gets how many downloads and whatnot, but honestly, the best podcast for your message and to help you reach your new engaged audience, it might not be the biggest, but size doesn't matter if interest and engagement is there. So a new to you audience who has pre-selected your topic of choice, that is a pretty awesome benefit to start this list. Number 2 is if you like to talk, this is your medium. Even if you're an introvert, you can still usually have a conversation with one person. You can always ask or research if they use the video on YouTube or if they stream direct to social media channel. I mean, if you're uncomfortable about being seen without your hair done or in your sweats, you find out, right? But otherwise, this is a great place to have a conversation and to indulge your inner chatterbox. A lot of people get worked up when dealing with, capital letters here, the media. Oh, the thought of traditional media is scary, and we avoid scary things. But if you're comfortable talking, you should be more willing to put yourself forward and to engage with the podcast host when the interview actually comes around. And you know that when you're comfortable, you flow so much more naturally. When you're comfortable, you express yourself better, more clearly, with more emotion, thereby drawing people into you and creating relationships. That's attraction marketing at its finest, right? Benefit 3 is that a podcast interview is less work intensive than some other PR tactics, and it's free. You still need to research and work to pitch yourself, prepare your messaging, but really you show up, you speak, and you're done. There's no production work, there's no hardcore marketing, although you should market the heck out of it for a number of reasons. And I do talk about this in my upcoming Podcasting for Publicity, Pitch Yourself for Success workshop series. The details are in my show notes. But you get all of these 10 benefits without having the pre-work of creating the audience and the platform, or the post-work and the cost of production and delivery. Trust me, as someone who does all of that and pays for the delivery, that's a sweet deal. Benefit number 4 is the opportunity to humanize and personalize your brand. You're talking about you, your business, your community, your values, and your beliefs. You're telling stories, you're laughing, you're just being you. And people buy from people, specifically from people they like. And you are so friggin' likable. Seriously. So round out your brand. Be the person standing up in front of your business door and welcome everyone listening into your sphere. Benefit 5 is an increase in your search engine optimization, or SEO. Now that's what tells the search engines that you are relevant and you're likely to provide value in certain searches. When you guest on a podcast, they always provide your contact details in the show notes. You'll provide them with your Twitter handle or your Facebook page, and most likely your website and email address. These are known as off-site SEO, which tell Google or whatever search engine is being used that you are relevant and credible, to bump you up on the search listings. Is this an immediate benefit? Probably not. But as a podcast episode is a long-lived form of content, those backlinks will be around for a while, and over a period of time, that relevancy and credibility, they count. That SEO leads very smoothly into benefit 6, which speaks to our bottom line, sales. At some point, people will click your links from the show notes. They will Google you. They'll find you on social media. They will check you out. Depending on the topic or the product that you sell, they may buy straight away. They might check you out and bookmark you. But this is earned media coverage, as we say in PR. And this is a dusting of gold on your bottom line. You've opened the door to your business and welcomed them in on the episode. This is them saying, "Oh, thank you very much," and maybe even removing their shoes, sitting down to stay a while. The person who hears you on a podcast and follows you to your business is a warm lead. And who doesn't need more of those? Benefit 7 is something I actually just mentioned a second ago: longevity. A podcast episode is your chance to speak once and be repeated forever. Even podcasts that are no longer being produced are still available, even a few years after they've stopped uploading. Those episodes are out there, searchable by anyone interested in whatever topic you're talking about, and your links are still there for those interested people to find. I recently heard someone say that a podcast episode is expected to remain relevant for 7 years. 7 years! Find me a Facebook post or even a magazine issue that's going to remain relevant for that long. Some of my original interviews still get downloads every month. I don't promote them after a year or so, although my pins are still available for them. But it just goes to show you that good content is good content. It sticks around. And the beauty of a podcast episode is that you can repurpose them for content ideas for ages. It just depends on how creative you want to be. So you can speak once, be heard for, let's say, 7 years, but use the material from the podcast episode regularly for months and months. You think it's an hour of your time. I think it's the beginning of a content goldmine. Benefit number 8 is that going on someone else's podcast gives you the chance to talk about something you haven't necessarily been able to really talk about with others. You don't have to go on a podcast to specifically talk about your business. There are podcasts for 1,001 different topics and philosophies, traditions and hobbies and, oh gosh, whatever else under the sun. As a way to humanize your brand, you could go on one of those and talk about something that you do in your spare time or that you just love to talk about. This shows you as a passionate person, which will drive others towards you. But it's a great thing just for yourself. I know I love the opportunity to talk to someone else about PR. It's kind of a niche thing. We don't talk about it at the dinner table. None of my friends are into it, but I really am. So, when I get the chance to go talk to someone who has a similar interest, I swallow down my introverted reluctance to engage with new people, and I always end up loving my time with them. It's good for my brand, but it's good for me as a person, which is actually still good for my brand, but that's beside the point. Benefit 9 is all about networking. You don't know who's listening. That warm audience might be all about you and your product or service, but it may be all about you and your business, your vibe, and you don't know where that might lead. I've had some interesting people reach out to genuinely connect with me as a result of my podcast. So far, it's led to some conversations. Do I know where they're going in the future? No. Would I have had these connections without going on my podcast or other people's podcasts and talking about things I really like to talk about? Probably not. If it works for me, and if it works for my guests, it's going to work for you. And the last one on this epic list is benefit number 10. And it's a little loosey-goosey, so roll with me here, okay? It's discovery. It's not just search engine discovery or networking and sales type of discovery. It's more like talk therapy and self-discovery. Sometimes you don't know what you think about something until someone asks you about it. And sometimes you develop a different take when you speak with a new person. You hear their perspective and it helps develop and shape yours. This can be utterly brilliant. And I dare say it can't really be bad. It not only helps you develop your own thoughts, but it helps you develop your messaging and become tighter and more fluid in its delivery. Practice makes better, and your message isn't a static thing. It evolves as you do. So the more you get out there and talk to different people about different things, the more you practice talking about your business in different ways, the better your messaging becomes. And that, my friend, is my list of 10 benefits of being a guest on a podcast. Still looking for a better phrase for that. I want to know if you've ever thought about these things before, or if you've ever thought about using a podcast guest appearance as a tool to grow your visibility and reputation. Oh, and don't forget to check out my Podcasting for Publicity, Pitch Yourself for Success workshop series. It starts February 15th, although if you're listening to this at a later date, because remember, podcasts stay around and get listened to for a long time, then you can check out my website. The links are in the show notes. Until next week, have a fan-freaking-tastic rest of your day. Thanks so much for listening this week. I invite you to sign up for my email list or join me in the Connections Coffee and Confidence community on Facebook. Those are the people who get first dibs on any classes or products I create, and they benefit from the extras I can't get into in a podcast format. I also lovingly request that if you've enjoyed this podcast, you leave a review on Apple. When I see a new review, I get so excited I almost spill my cappuccino froth. Almost. And if you're a woman entrepreneur who's ready to get serious about using the power of communications to grow your business, send me an email at janice@janicefogarty.com. All my details are in the show notes. Thank you again for listening today, and I'll chat with you again next week.